Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It is only a few days till Christmas. It's only a little bit longer to the January transfer window opens. It's not too many days till Liverpool go to Spurs in another Premier League game, trying to make it 3 on the bounce. And I'm joined at a season of goodwill by the renowned and the respected Mr. Lewis Steele. Lewis, how are we?
Very well, thank you. Just getting in the Christmas spirit. A bit of wrapping to do after I finished on this podcast, so busy afternoon ahead.
Any good? Good with the bow? Good with tags, swizzles, or just a bog standard man?
Nope, I am probably the worst rapper in the world. If I can, I always buy present bags and put them in there. Even if that sets me back a few more quid, it's well worth it to avoid wrapping. But I'm not good at all. Maybe I'll get better this year. Who knows?
We'll see, eh? A lot of things to talk about for this year and coming into the next one as well. But we should start a little bit with Saturday, shouldn't we? Because we haven't really had much to talk about in terms of back-to-back wins for the Reds. But this is a positive. It wasn't all perfect, Lewis. But in terms of the game and the attacking intent that we saw, there were more positives, weren't there?
Yeah, I think also, obviously, Brighton could have easily scored a few goals in the game, but the main thing is they didn't. And the main thing for me over the course of the last 7 days is 2 clean sheets away at Inter Milan, which is never easy, despite Liverpool having a good record at San Siro. But also Brighton, when you look at some of the teams who have caused Liverpool problems over the last few months, Palace, these other, loads, pretty much everyone, to be honest. But Brighton have some handy players. They have some handy wingers. They're a good team who create a lot of chances, and they're also a team who tend to get wins against the big boys. So I think you can accept them creating a few chances. The good thing is Liverpool created more, and they put theirs away. So it was a very welcome win. On the back of 2 pretty dismal draws, especially the Sunderland one was poor, and then the Leeds one, the late drama. I think it was a very needed week for the managers, especially.
Yeah, it does feel like even if it's just a temporary bit, it's just eased a bit of the buzz around him. And I tell you about buzz around a player. This player, back-to-back Premier League doubles, Hugo Ekitike, and funnily enough, the Premier League have said is the star player of the match week. But for us, I don't even know how to phrase this exactly, Lewis. It's not that he's been good or gone up a level. He's just starting more to look the part, and he's almost the first attacker on the team sheet now.
Yeah, I agree. He started the season really, really well, and then he maybe tailed off a little bit. But what you can say is he's probably the best signing of all the signings this summer. Yeah. And when you look at how Wirtz and especially Isak and the fullbacks have struggled to come up to pace with the Premier League and the tempo and all that, he's just looked like he's been playing in the Premier League for 5 years already. Yeah. And it's easy to forget that he's a young striker who's meant to be a work in progress, sort of. He knows where the goal is. And I think the best thing about him is he wasn't signed just for his goals. He was signed for his all-round game. And that's fair enough. If you can contribute all the good things in the build-up that maybe Darwin could never do and Slot called him out for last season, he does all that, but also he scores goals. So he's almost a 2-in-1, I think. Brilliant player, and I think he's only just getting started. He seems I've interviewed him. He's a really nice chap as well. So that always counts a lot in my book.
Looks good on the social media as well. There's some quite good posts out there as well. So we'll give him that at the same time. And I suppose I should ask you about them because you did mention 2 of the signings. It's not been brilliant starts by any means for Milos Kerkez and Florian Wirtz. And while we're not saying it's bad, Saturday, they both looked good in this one though, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think maybe in hindsight we should have. I think if Liverpool had been winning games, no one would have really cared too much about how long it was that these signings were taking to come to their best. fact that Liverpool were losing, it sort of made everyone be like, "What's going on? Why are these still terrible?" But so they've had the microscope on them. But I think maybe in hindsight, we should have expected them to take a few months to get going, because it's normally the case with signings, not just at Liverpool, by the way, across the board in the Premier League. It normally takes a few months for them to get going at the new club.
Yeah.
But I think obviously next season, I think the title's gone obviously this season, but next season you'll have Wirtz, who'll be 5 times better than he is now. You'll have Isak, who is fully fit, or well, you'd hope he's fully fit by then.
Yeah.
You'll have Kirkes, who will have the confidence of having a year in the team, and Frimpong as well, who we've not seen through injury. And then obviously we've mentioned Ekitike. So all of these players weren't just signed for 4 or 5 months; they were signed for 4 or 5 years. So I think next season, and it sounds stupid to already be talking about next season, but I think then that is when we can say, "Oh wow, that window was actually really good." It doesn't look it right now because of Liverpool's league position in the last 2 months in results, but I think they're all starting to show signs that they're on the right trajectory.
Yeah, fingers crossed they continue it. And I mean, speaking of players on the right trajectory, he's been at the club for a number of years, but Curtis Jones, 200 appearances already at his age, but just another game where can't really think of another word. Just brilliant. Knitted it all together, dropped deeper, kept the ball. You expect that elite ball retention, progressed it well. Just another top class performance from Curtis here.
Brilliant. I thought he was one of many standout performers in Milan as well. Maybe man of the match in that game as well. So I think you can safely make a case that he was man of the match 2 games running. And I think you can also make a case that based on some of the other midfielders' form recently, then Curtis Jones absolutely deserves to be in that team sheet for a run of games now. I feel like Curtis over the last 2 seasons has had these little runs where he's looked really good, and then something will just happen. Maybe he'll get a little niggly injury, or he will just go off the boil a bit. So my challenge for him now is we know that you can put these performances in, but can you put them in, week out? Because that's what will separate him from being a good midfielder, which everyone knows he is, to being one of the very best midfielders in the Premier League. He's still obviously very young, and I still think there's a lot of growth, but the last week has been maybe one of his best in a Liverpool shirt. But it's all about now, can he do it again against Spurs on Saturday? Can he do it again against Wolves, the one after Christmas, and just put a run together? But he's looked really good. He's grown into a bit of a leader figure as well in the dressing room, from what people are saying. So it's all good for Curtis.
Yeah, leadership, performances, as you said, if you just keep it going, that's all we're really asking for. And I mean, we're going to need him on Saturday, and I don't know who exactly he's going to have with him in the midfield, in the defence. But I mean, this was straight after the Brighton game, Lewis. We knew that Joe Gomez goes off after half an hour. Arne Slot talks about Dominic Szoboszlai and his ankle. I mean, the good news is Connor Bradley and Jeremy Frimpong sound like they're going to be available for this one at the weekend. But we I don't think we expect it with Gomez, but we need good news on Szoboszlai, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. I can't see Gomez playing, but Szoboszlai, as everyone's discussed, has been Liverpool's best player this season. It would be a huge blow if he was out.
Yeah.
It does sound like it's probably a little bit more of an impact injury, and it's probably come at a good time because Liverpool are only playing 1 game a week at the moment, which is good for injuries, because if Szoboszlai got this injury a month ago, then he might have suddenly missed 3 or 4 games. It means that if he does miss the Spurs game, then he's only probably going to miss 1 game. But also, it does sound like it's not as bad as it could have been. So I think I'd still say he's more likely than not to be okay for Spurs. But we'll have to see what the week brings, how the injuries settle down, and what Arne Slot says on Friday morning at his presser.
Will be interesting to see. And I mean, talking off the pitch stuff, because diamond formations, defensive concerns, but I've got to start with this. This is a new enterprise, even for you. We've had your video diaries. We've had all sorts of tours of America, Europe. It's a fetching green shirt, but what actually is going on tonight exactly?
It's just, I think it's just, fans will ask questions, and I'll answer them live. It's basically just like I did a few YouTube lives in the summer. It's just more official this time. That's all. Craig Hope did one about Newcastle in the summer and
Yeah,
did very well. A lot of Liverpool fans were on that because obviously it was the Isak saga at the time. So I think it's just a chance for fans to ask anything, and I will do my very best to give the aggregators something to eat up about transfers because they seem to be hungry for these Q&As every time I do them. This time it's live rather than a written version. But yeah, I look forward to that. But I won't be wearing that green shirt, don't worry.
fair enough. Live chance for it to go wrong. But in terms of questions we've got for you, and before we just get into the transfer bit, the diamond, the change in formation recently that we've seen from Liverpool. I mean, it gets the midfielders in the team. I suppose the positive of it does seem to suit quite a lot of the players. Some players have looked, even Gravenberg, maybe more of a simplified role. We talked about Jones Aboslai. Does seem to suit a lot of the personnel.
It does, yeah. It gets. I spoke to Curtis about it last week in Milan, and he sort of says, it gets all the best players onto the pitch at the same time. What it's done is it's solidified them a little bit. Obviously, the back-to-back clean sheets prove that. Slot would say that he sort of played it at Leeds when they conceded 3 goals, but he would argue that they, not because of the formation, but mainly from set pieces and whatever. But he can argue that all he likes. I do think it just gets everyone into the team. As I said, I think it suits Ekitike because he can play sort of in that half space, and he'll have another striker with him. Maybe it definitely suits Curtis Jones because a lot of the play comes through the middle. He can be like a creator, and it's really solidified Liverpool. It gives Slot the one thing that he wants, which is control, bit of patience in the build-up as well. There's a lot of players in the middle, so they can keep the ball easier. And I think that's what Slot wants. So, he wants that control. But in the 2 months before this, last few weeks, it was absolute chaos every Liverpool game. And you sort of thought, well, they might win this, but they could also lose, or it could be a 4-3 either way. It felt like that every time you went to watch a Liverpool game. And obviously, it was probably good fun for the neutrals, but it wasn't good fun for anyone else, really.
No, really not. I suppose the only negative side of with the diamond is it's great we're getting all those best players on the pitch, as Curtis says, but you are asking your midfielders especially to do a lot. I think McAllister clocked up like 12K in the San Siro's, Bosley and Curtis Jones not far off. We haven't really, we've got 4 midfielders, you'd probably say, that Slot wants, 4 senior ones. It's putting a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, it is. That's the problem, really, because if one of them gets an injury, then the whole thing just falls apart, doesn't it? And you've got a couple of semi-injury prone players in that list, so it sort of puts into focus the need for a midfielder, I think, in probably in the summer. Maybe an Adam Wharton, an Elliot Anderson, one of them. But obviously we're a World Cup summer and both of them will probably go up in value. There's obviously loads of other options. They were just 2 that came into my head. But I think a midfielder should be on the list for the summer, whether Slot persists with this formation or not, because Endo is basically there because he's good at seeing out games. But I think you probably want someone that can do a little bit more than that. So I think that just brings that into focus a little bit more.
Yeah, midfield is one of the areas that we'll talk about a little bit more. But actually, I suppose it's right to move on to this in terms of transfer links, because it's what's going off in the chat panel and what people are asking about as well. With the needs at the moment, I mean, could it be even any more pointed than we've got 2 fit centre halves? Surely a senior centre back or a centre back capable of starting has to come through the door in January.
Yeah, I think that's a necessity for me. And I've said this a few times. Liverpool may think that they can get by without signing a centre-back, but you're a Virgil van Dijk hamstring. I know he doesn't get many injuries, but
No.
you can't rely on that. He's not superhuman. He could easily just pull his hammy, and that's your top four gone. The same with Konate. I know he's not been great overall this season, but the last thing you want is him to get injured as well. And I've said on this podcast before last season how they in January turned down money for Nunes, and they turned down money to bring Trent, to let Trent go early.
Yeah.
So they lost out on 20 million with that Trent thing in January. What's stopping them from just spending that 20 million this January, 25, 30 million, say, and getting in a Mark Gahey-like figure? Because I think he would really, really bolster the chances of having a good end to the season, not just in the Premier League, but in the Champions League. I think this is a team that is more than capable of winning the Champions League if they fix a few of the problems, but it's certainly not possible if any more of these, if one of the defenders breaks down and is out for 2 months or whatever.
Yeah, it really are threadbare there. And even the core options like Endo are out at the moment, so it does seem a little bit desperate. Need a bit of luck till the end of the year at least. And I mean, you mentioned Mark Gay. There's even reports now he's a leading target as well as for us. Manchester City are in the mix. There's been other names linked as well, which I suppose we've talked about, like Joel O'Doyne's at Club Brugge. Thinking as well, Schlotterbeck's been mentioned at some times, even Jeremy Jacquet now at Rennes. There's a lot of names mentioned, but nothing really seems close, does it?
No, but you have to remember that Gahey was 99.9% a Liverpool player on the last day of the summer window. So I think if they really wanted to do that, they could just click the fingers and that'll be that. We know that City like him. We know that Bayern like him. We know that Real Madrid have had a little look at him. But he may feel a loyalty to Liverpool after what happened in the summer, or maybe he feels upset at Liverpool after what happens in the summer. We don't know. But that one is definitely still possible, still more than possible. And then the others you've mentioned of obviously all names that have cropped up a few times.
Yeah.
The other lad at Palace, by the way, looks good. Lacroix.
Yeah.
Lacroix, yeah. Liverpool had a little look at him before he went to Palace, actually, I believe. Not saying that is one that could happen, but it's just thought that popped into my head a few times this week. Yeah, so I think they need to just that they don't need to necessarily break the bank for any of these names that we've just mentioned, but it's just it's a huge necessity for me because I never really understand that we'll just wait till the summer, because it's like, well, if you need a centre back in the summer, well, why does that mean you don't need one now? So I think it's a 100% must happen in January for me.
And yet we're still not sure if it absolutely will. We won't have long to wait and see. And in terms of we need defenders, we need bodies through the door. We've talked about this. This name just isn't going away. Although it's important to say with Antoine Semenyo, seems to be linked with pretty much every Premier League club he could be mentioned. And Indy Callier keeps retweeting about him as well. Is it still almost as simple as last time we talked? Liverpool are in the mix, but there's still others there as well.
Yeah, Liverpool have done a lot of groundwork on Semenyo in the last 12 months, I would say 6 months, which could leave them in a really good position for example, if Man United make a bid for Semenyo, Liverpool could just sneak in the back door almost and be like, nope, we're having him, thank you very much. So I think that might happen. There's 4 or 5 clubs who are really strong for Semenyo, and it's all the ones that you would expect.
Yeah,
and I think it's fair to say he's the most sought after player in the Premier League right now. And I was watching a bit of the game on Monday at Old Trafford, and you can see why.
Yeah.
But you have to also say he did, before that game or before this weekend, he did go about 8 games without scoring a goal. So He's not perfect, but I think he brings something that Liverpool don't have, and that's that pace. He can play off both sides. He knows where the goal is. He's chipping in with assists as well. I think he's the full package, even though he's not the finished article yet. I think there's still improvement for him to make, if that makes sense. So, yeah, Liverpool are in a good position for Semenyo, but it's worth saying a lot will depend on what he wants to do and what his camp and his agents want to do. He got tickets for a few people on Monday night at Old Trafford. A few old mates of his, which did make me wonder a bit about the United link. But surely putting myself in Semenyo's shoes, don't know who he supported as a child or whatever, which could influence it. But surely, if you've got Liverpool and you've got United on the table, it's a no-brainer. You go to Liverpool, but obviously, I don't know. He could have grown up as a United fan, and that was his dream. So let's see what happens.
There is a good question there, and thank you for all your comments as well in the chat panel. This is a good one to ask, I think. There was huge expenditure in the summer. I know there was money recouped, by the dozens as well. Do Liverpool need to sell before they can buy in January? Is that your understanding, or can they just go again?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's all within limits. I don't think they definitely couldn't go and spend another two or 300 million. But I think they've got the money there to do at least one more, and we can prove that by saying they were this close from signing Gay for 35 million on deadline day. So that proves to me that the money is there, even though that may have, if that was done 24 hours earlier, I think it would have triggered Gomez to leave. A lot of if buts and maybes on this, but I think they've definitely got the money. But I just don't think they have the money to go and do £150 million in 1 January. I think then they would have to sell to buy. But you look at the squad and it's like it's almost like who would they sell? Because they can't sell Gomez now, because then it's just the same situation of no defenders whatsoever. And there's not really that many sellable assets otherwise that they'd want to sell. Obviously, there's the elephant in the room that they could just sell Salah, but they're not going to do that realistically in January, as far as I'm aware, unless the Saudis suddenly put 200 million on the table. But that's not going to happen. So I think the money's there is the long and short answer.
Yeah, well, it's what we're expecting. It's what we need. Not asking for 200 million, but one centre half would make a huge difference. And speaking of players that might be coming in, I can't even remember or pronounce his name, which is not being disrespectful, but I know you mentioned in your confidential column, a Celtic youngster we're set to prize away, aren't we, from Parkhead, if I'm right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't claim to know much about him either. Jakimi, is it? I don't know too much about him at all, other than Liverpool have scouted him for a while. They've got a good relationship with the Celtic after buying Ben Doak 3 or 4 years ago, and then selling him on to Bournemouth. I presume Celtic got a little bit of a payday from that. This kid's only 15, I think, so we're not going to. He's probably one of them that they'll sign, and then you won't actually hear much about him for 3 years, and then all of a sudden he'll be tearing it up in the UEFA Youth League or whatever. But from the few conversations I've had about him, he seems like a very talented lad. And Liverpool have, maybe more than any Premier League club in the last 5 years, they've done well at recruiting at this sort of age of 14 to 16. You look at Rio, you look at Trey Neone. Amaro Nallo has made his debut a couple of times. Got sent off twice, I should say. But they've done quite well at signing players around that sort of age and bringing them into the first team. Obviously, not many of them have made it yet, but there's a hope in Liverpool that a few of them will start to make it in the next few years.
Fingers crossed on that one. And people, I know everyone's asking in the chat panel about January names and all this. I think it's important to say, because you alluded to this, we've talked through most of the centre-back names. People are wanting a DM, a midfielder, whatever it may be. But I think, as you said, all the names being linked, it seems longer term, doesn't it? Like Elliot Anderson, Adam Wharton, they're not moving in World Cup year. Belabor feels unlikely. Any name that seems on the table, it'd probably be wrong to expect a midfielder to arrive in January.
Yeah, I agree. I can't see that happening unless they just think it's now or never in terms of signing him, because they always talk about this being an opportunistic thing, and they'll happily bring forward a transfer of like the Mamardashvili, for example. And you sort of think with Elliot Anderson, if you look at Tuchel's lineups, he's been playing every week for every game for England for the last 6 months. So let's say he's worth 70 million now. That's just plucked from the sky. If England win the World Cup with him playing every game next to Declan Rice, it'll be worth double that.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, why wouldn't you act now? But then if you're him, you may think, well, what if I go there and sit on the bench every week for the rest of the season? So, but yeah, I do think, as I mentioned earlier, midfielder has to be on the agenda soon. There'll be plenty of names. Obviously, we know they missed out on Zubimendi 2 years ago, and they've still not really delved back into that market. But I was watching one of the Palace games recently, and Adam Wharton just looks really, really good. And I think he'd really suit Liverpool's style of play, a Liverpool or a City or a possession-based team like that. I think excellent, maybe even better than Elliot Anderson, who's the first choice at England. But he looks really good, Wharton.
Yeah, any of those names, we would love to come in, but the chances in January are just minimal, it seems. And in terms of, I mean, you mentioned the elephant in the room. You've been there in the mixed zones. You've heard it all, probably a bit aghast maybe or surprised at what's happened. And you wrote about it as well, sort of the inside stories. It says the Saudis been sniffing for weeks, view from Egypt, even San Diego, which we're going to have to mention. But Mo Salah loving his life at Liverpool. But it's that word you put in there, Lewis, truce. This is not fully resolved from reading that. We're at almost a polite truce. Is that fair to say at the moment?
Yeah, it's I think I wrote a line in the piece. It's almost like on Christmas Day 1915 or whatever year it was, when they all came over and the Germans and the English had a quick game of footy and then all just went back to killing each other the next day. It's not quite as extreme as that, of course, but I don't think it's necessarily all lovey-dovey again. It's there's still a bit of there's still probably a lot of tension, and I think it's probably a good thing for all parties now that Salah's off playing with Egypt for the next month. So his future is still uncertain, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he leaves in the summer, to be honest. But I still think he will see out this season with Liverpool unless something happens and something's popping away behind the scenes. But last week was busy for everyone because this story was massive. It was the biggest story in sport last week. And the Saudis are definitely keen on him, as we've known for a while. A few MLS clubs are on his tail, but I don't know if they'll be able to afford him. But Liverpool are adamant that they won't be selling him and they want him to stay.
It's interesting because that seems to be the noise. But I mean, you think back to that, let's say, a bombshell interview that he gives in the mix zone. He talked about broken promises, that someone at the club wants me out, and obviously he separated the way he talked about Arne Slot as well. What do you think is at the centre of this with Mo now? Do you think it is that everyone's agreed to kick the can down the road for 6 months, or do you think there's still got to be something more to put this to bed?
No, I think there's got to be some sort of. Well, we don't know exactly where they left it on Friday when they had this heart-to-heart chat, the AXA. But I think while he's away at AFCON, it would be wise for Richard Hughes to maybe fly out and have a little lunch with Rami Abbas and just iron out a few difficulties, because there's still tensions and there's going to be talk the whole time he's at AFCON, that every time that he's playing, the commentators will still be talking about the Saudis and whatever.
Yeah.
So the issue's still there. And obviously Salah and Slot probably respect each other, but also probably don't like each other still, because Salah's made it very clear what he thinks of Slot.
Yeah.
And if I was Slot and someone had publicly said that about me, I probably would be a bit upset as well. So yeah, I think there needs to be some more talks while he's away at AFCON, because it was a big thing, and I don't think it's the sort of thing you just shake hands and it's all forgotten about. I think there's something deeper going on that needs to be addressed.
Does feel that way. And I mean, you mentioned there Rami, Richard Hughes, all those parties. It does still feel that it'll depend on the outcome of these talks. But that means that at the moment, every outcome's still possibly on the table, isn't it? Until that January window shuts. Like any encouragement, the Saudis will be bidding at the same time. So until we get almost the outcome of that meeting, maybe everything's still possible.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, when they bid in 2023, they didn't bid till like the last 2 days of the window, and there was a bit of chatter at the time that had they had bid a month earlier, and Salah may have ended up in Saudi 2 years ago, which would have been crazy, really. And you sort of start to think then, obviously Salah was the main man of the title triumph. If they'd done that, then it could have easily just not won the title last year, and so on and so forth. So I don't think he completely closed the door to Saudi back then. When he goes, not if, I sort of got the impression at the time. But I still can't see him leaving in January, but I certainly wouldn't rule out him leaving in the summer, when it's probably Liverpool's last chance to get any money for him.
Does feel like the summer will be the big one to watch. Although again, we can't rule that out in January. And I suppose the final one in January, I suppose after the summer, everyone envisaged it would be a non-existent January if all the signings have been flying, everything that we've been done. But where we sit right now, I think it's fair to say, if there's not at least one body comes in the form of a defender, probably centre half, Liverpool can look really short very quickly. It does feel like there is a need, rather than whether it's a want or not, something has to be done in January.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think also before the bad run and at the end of August, after this window slammed shut, I was on here and other places saying despite spending 450 million, they did look a man light.
Yeah.
And I still feel that is the case now. The defenders, I think you almost can't really count Rio Angamura as a first team player, even though he sits on the bench every week and he'll probably play in the FA Cup and whatever. You almost can't count him as a player, because Slot just doesn't. He's not an option. Like Gakpo gets injured, I don't even think Angamura's in the fort to play. So in effect, they've got less forwards than we thought they had. Slot clearly doesn't trust Chiesa to start games. I think Chiesa could come off the bench and score a hat-trick every week and he still wouldn't start.
No.
It's I do think they're two men light in the squad, definitely. So I'd be surprised if they signed both Semenyo and Gahey in the same window, but I wouldn't be massively surprised.
Yeah, it's all on the table. It's hard to know what will shake out, but we've only got a few weeks to wait and see what will develop. All it leaves me to say then is, for answering all the questions, for going through it all, and from looking sharp from a fresh trim, Lewis, it is much appreciated.
A pleasure, as always.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters